call Eugenia Sage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Green Party will be supporting the Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 2 and would join with others in congratulating everybody who stood for election this month, and whether they got elected or not, because it is a lot putting yourself out there to be decided on by voters. So congratulations to everybody who stood, and congratulations to those who were elected and will do their best to represent their communities over the next 3 years. Mr Speaker, Auckland's local boards were set up with the express purpose of enabling democratic decision-making by and on behalf of communities within their local board area. But they can't do that very well unless they have a strong mandate from voters. And so it's obvious the range of concern that's been expressed about the very low voter turnout in these local body elections, because that does undermine the democratic decision-making and the mandate that the boards have and that councils generally have. And in Auckland, we saw the turnout drop from 55% to 33%, one of the lowest on record. And just as smaller rural councils tend to have a higher voter turnout than larger urban ones, so it was with the smaller local boards in Auckland. They had a much higher turnout than some of their more populous neighbours. And two of the standout performers are here with the Great Barrier Board and the Waiheke Island Board. 67% of the electors on Great Barrier voted for their local board, and 55% of more than 6,500 electors on Waiheke Island voted for their board. And yet when you compare that with some of the larger boards such as Manurewa, where you have an electoral population of over 53,000, the turnout there, as Louisa Wall noted, was quite low, around 29%. So it's this reason, Mr Speaker, that the Green Party will likely oppose the proposals to amend the Local Government Act to enable local boards to be rolled out in other parts of the country where there is currently a cap on using local boards, that they can only be used in communities of over 400,000 people if a unitary authority is established. Because the local boards, as Phil Twyford noted, have substantially lower power, smaller powers than the councils that they replace. They can certainly recommend bylaws, but they cannot sign those off. They have an oversight and a recommendatory power in relation to budgets, but they're not the main decision maker. So the approach that the national government seems to have is that bigger is better when it comes to local councils. We don't agree with that, because bigger organisations tend to be more remote from electors. There's less ability for electors to see that they can influence decision-making and influence change, and people tend to feel more alienated from big centralised agencies. And that's why this move to have local boards replace councils and have a big unitary authority is of major concern in the proposed changes to the Local Government Act to be rolled out later this year, because that won't necessarily improve democracy or lead to more voter engagement. And Mr Speaker, there's been a range of commentators on the low turnout. Associate Professor Christine Chain from Massey University in this morning's Dominion Post was calling for an independent inquiry to address this deepening malaise affecting local elections. And certainly the Justice and Electoral Committee looks at turnout after each election. But I think we've got to do much more, because we have a very casual attitude to democracy in New Zealand. And while electronic voting is going to be trialled in 2016, that is not a silver bullet. We need civics education in schools so that students understand the institutions of democracy, so that they get the habit of voting when they turn 18. We need much more proactive effort by councils to publicise the fact that there is an election, and commend the Hamilton City Council. Their local electoral officers were out on the street with ballot boxes encouraging motorists to drop their ballot in, and they estimated they got an extra 1,000 votes by doing that. But on some councils, on their websites, it wasn't even obvious that there was an election. So we need to do much more, Mr Speaker, to improve the turnout, and local councils are a way of doing that, not just changing councils to boards.
Call Jamie Lee Ross. Thank you, Mr Speaker. I just want to round out the government's contribution on this bill by thanking the opposition for some of the comments that have been made about the